gonna finish this goddamn roof or what?
I thought you were.
I thought you were.
No, I thought you were.
Joe was up there wanking on his board. And, yeah, he had to think about that, didn't he? Wanking on me board. Anyways, it's the only stiff thing you can get your hands around, right, Joe? So we're gonna finish this thing up this afternoon. Yeah, it is. It just has to get done. And I'm the nailer, and Tim is the measurer, which is why we have a bunch of scrap wood there, because Tim doesn't know how to measure. Right, Tim? No, that's not true. So we're just going to get this finished up and enclosed. I will have this thing full of what do you call it? Weasel diesel fuel before the end of the year, because the price of diesel fuel is coming down, and I want to have them filled up so that when we do actually get some weather, it will be ready to go. How many you got there? You got enough? Keep coming.
I got
Right, Joe? Keep coming. Sick little.
sawdust in my eyes, disgusting water in my mouth.
You got Justin Bieber in your mouth?
Disgusting
Ew.
water.
Oh, I thought he said Justin Bieber in his mouth.
That's worse.
That's worse than the cat shit you stuck your hand in earlier.
What is with me?
Here, kitty. I think there's a shotgun in there. You could shoot the fucking cat.
It's not the cat.
It's cat shit.
Nope, it's Maxie.
Are you sure?
Yes, because I found the pile of dog shit I drug the hose through, and it's huge.
Oh, it's huge dog. Okay, for all you snowflakes that are about to bitch about the banter at the beginning of this video, please refrain from commenting. This is just kind of normal stuff that happens when you're outside working with other men. Yes, men. We're all men here. The boys are all well over the age of 18, so just stop it now. Anyhow, got a lot of comments on, how this structure is going to fail, how I don't know, permanent structure over a fuel tank isn't legal. It amazes me. I've seen thousands of tanks covered up like this. This is technically not even a permanent. It isn't a permanent structure because there's no foundation. So you have to understand what a permanent structure is. In order for a permanent structure in the state of New Jersey, there has to be a foundation, like concrete and steel, or concrete and concrete down to a footing. There is no permanent structure here. This is just two dikes that I built a roof over to house the fuel tanks to keep them protected from the elements of the sun, the wind, the rain, the snow, and the hail. It's just the way I'm doing it. If for some silly reason the fuel guy comes out and says, hey, I can't fill those because they're in a semi-permanent structure, then I will have to tear it all apart and leave them exposed, which is ridiculous because I've already talked to him about it. He says, yeah, you can put a roof over that. It's perfectly fine. It is ventilated at the top. It is not going to contain the fumes, and besides, as long as the switch that I use in the fuel pump is let me think here, as long as it is the switch for the fuel pump where it doesn't throw a spark, but it's not gasoline, it's diesel fuel, which you can throw matches into diesel fuel. It won't light. Diesel fuel will only light if it is atomized, really atomized. So, yeah, so there you go. Having trouble with my pass load nailer. I don't understand what its issue was. Gas on these things, if it gets a little old, and I mean a little old, not a lot old, but there's an expiration date on that stuff. And you kind of wonder, how in the hell does gas in a little cylinder have an expiration date? Now, I don't know what that gas is. I kind of thought that it was a methane gas. It's got a funky smell to it. But once that gas gets old, even towards the expiration date, you start having misfires. And that's what I'm having. And I hate misfires. It's so annoying because you just want this thing to go pop, 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 like it's supposed to do. And it does go rather rapidly when everything's working correctly. Now, I did drop the damn thing into water twice now in its existence. Once when it was new, back in 2000, and I think it was 2004 when I dropped it the first time. So 14 years ago, I dropped that thing in water. It was completely submerged, and I tore it all apart, and I dried it all out and lubricated it, put it all back together. Now, you do have to realize that I bought this thing in 2003, so, you know, it is old, and I've used it a lot. My brother-in-law, Scott, he used it many times. I've used it, you know, excessively. I built a whole house with that thing. My other brother-in-law, the one that just passed away, he hated it. He has one or two or four, or had one. You know, well, he still does. He's passed away now, but it's Cody's. But he had those nailers, and he said they're too damn slow, and they're too unreliable. Like if you see me sitting there going bang, bang, bang up against that wood, it's enough to drive you nuts when it's not firing correctly. So what we did do was change out the gas cylinder, and then voila, it started to work again. You can tell there's gas in the cylinder because you can shake it and just slightly feel it. There's really not much in there, just a few grams of gas to ignite those things. But my brother-in-law, Craig, he hated the fact that I used those. He just did. He's like, that thing. He says, they take forever. And it was a 12-penny nail. Oop, there I am. Okay, so I did have some editing out that I had to do there. Yeah, just a waste of time. I don't know what happened. I forget, even though it was just yesterday. So yesterday, we did have a memorial service for my brother-in-law. He is, it was kind of tearful and not tearful. Definitely, I couldn't speak. There was a couple of stories I'd like to tell about things that me and Craig did together and kind of some of the trouble we had gotten into. Like the time there was a herd of deer out in front of my grandmother's house, and I mean, really, there was no buildings out there, and he had his 30-06, and I had an M1 Garand, and I had a bunch of ammunition, and he had whatever he had, I think 5 rounds in that Remington rifle, and we just laid into him, which Craig wasn't really much for shooting back in the day, but he had that rifle with him for some silly reason, and we laid into those damn deer. I don't know how many we got, but it was just like pull the trigger and see what happens. We young and dumb, and did whatever we wanted to do. Now, Craig was only 9 years older than me. He was born in 1963. I was born in 1972. But we did have a pretty good relationship, I would say. Now, after my sister passed away, he was more recluse from the family, not because he didn't care for us or love us, but every time that he came to the farm, before we actually put my sister in the ground, and she is buried on the farm. She was cremated and buried on the farm. It was just really difficult for him. And then after we put her in the ground, then he never came back unless I think maybe once or twice my aunt had coaxed him into the farm. There were some things that she needed him to do, and it was just very painful because everywhere he turned around, he saw my sister. Really, literally, my sister was a big part of that farm. Even, from getting kids together to unload little bales of hay. And that was her job. I bailed it. She got kids together because she always had kids around her. She only had one son, Cody, but there was teams and teams of young ladies and gentlemen that just loved my sister Wendy. So, that was her job, and with the carriage business and the horses and all that stuff. And her horses are still on the farm. But anyways, this video took a turn. We are just getting this thing done. I don't know why the camera got
Don't do that. All right, so you've seen some of the progress that's been made in high speed. Ooh, yeah, got a fire. We're putting the fire out. Water on the fire. Crack the barrel. You just tempered it. It'll shatter now. Yeah, we're not quite finished. I've got the corners. We have the corners finished. Of course, I'm going to level that all up, and I'm going to put a piece of wood down the end of those stringers that are there, or those purlins. just to make it nice. And I'll do the same thing here, up against here. I gotta do that. And the door here will be lockable. Like I said earlier in this series, that I'm going to actually put a one pump to pump from both tanks. Yeah, get enough water in there. I don't want to get a phone call that thing's burning. So, yeah. Let's get this sitting there and getting the ship put away. Tim, is it? Yeah, so it's fully enclosed. Got enough ventilation so we won't have a vapor issue. The dikes will work really nice. This is where it's going to be filled from. We're going to put hinged doors on the outside of it with latches just to finish it off, make it look somewhat presentable. And yeah, that's that. I do want to put a set of stairs up here because there used to be a ladder there with the old tank. And yeah. So anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed that part.